Welcome everyone to PNCFL 2021 and to our expert panel on task-based language teaching, its history, its research, and reflection on practice. My name is Svetlana Nuss. I have with me panelists today. It's Dmitrii Pastushenkov. Dmitrii, if you'd wait at us. And Snezhana Zheltoukhova, Sabine Siekmann, and Wendy Martelle. We all have certain experiences running Tblt in our classrooms, but first we wanted to introduce you to the whole, to the notion of Tblt, what it is, and what we like about it, what we know about it as a concept. So task-based language teaching is an empirically investigated pedagogy, and it garnered a lot of attention, especially in the last decade, with the programs on Tblt popping up all over the globe. Tblt provides an alternative to traditional grammar instruction, grammar translation, and present, practice, produce frameworks, pedagogies, and it emphasizes attention and interaction during authentic tasks. We would like to accent the just accent a few important parts of Tblt. So why even the conversation about Tblt? As I mentioned, the task-based language learning is becoming very prominent in the foreign language instruction, and also the research on it is also increasing, and especially in the last decade. So the important characteristics of task-based language learning are, first of all, that it deals with tasks, not language. So we work with task as opposed to language as a unit of instruction. Tasks can be sequenced into a program. They don't have to be sequenced into a program. So it can be task-based program, or they can be incremented. They can be increments in your syllabi. Tasks work with authentic use of language, and to expand a little more on that, it's meaning and communication driven. Task-based language teaching, recently we had a conference started in the last 15 years. I believe we had seven conferences so far to the date. It's a biennial conference, international conference, that's moving from Europe to United States to Australia to different parts of the world to Asia. So to give you an idea of the scale of this enterprise. Tblt has a solid theoretical grounding in second language acquisition, research, and theory. So this brings us to several very prominent features of task-based language learning. One of them is the definition of task, and I'm going to have ask Wendy Martelle to please talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of discussion about how to define a task within the field of task-based language teaching, and there are many definitions, potential definitions of a task. And Ellis in 2003 brought together a lot of these definitions and kind of examined different definitions of task. And we really like this particular definition that highlights four characteristics of a task. So in order for an activity to be a task in second language teaching and learning, a task, first of all, has to have a gap of some sort. So the learners have to find something, there's a gap that they have to fill in some way. The task also has to have an outcome other than language. So not using language for the sake of using language. So ideally the outcome is something other than producing, for example, producing the past tense ending of verbs, for instance. Thirdly, learners use their own resources in order to engage in the task. So The instructor or the teacher doesn't tell them how to go about doing the task. The learners use their own resources to figure that out. And then finally, all of this, one of the primary things that Svetlana just mentioned earlier is that there's a primary focus on meaning for the task. So these are 4 characteristics that Ellis 2003 identified as part of a task, and this is a definition that we like in particular.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for the sake of reference, we put in our slides the task, the definition of a task that was put forward by Michael Long in many of his publications and was refined in his 2016 publication. Tasks are the real-world communicative uses to which learners will put the L2 beyond the classroom. L2 here is referred to foreign language, second language, additional language, any language that the learner is acquiring. In addition to their mother tongue, the things they will do in and through the L2. And this is how he envisions the things that we do in tasks. So it can be academic purposes, something like writing a lab report or attending a graduate level lecture on economics. They can be vocational training purposes, maybe working in a noisy kitchen under a chef, or to train as a computer technician, vocational training purposes. Occupational purposes, he defines as leading, for example, a guided tour, or maybe serving abroad and delivering a speech after dinner, an after dinner speech, or conducting a visa application interviews. And social survival purposes, navigating public transportation in a setting where you don't speak that language. Our learners don't speak the language as a first language. It can be buying, renting a car, buying a ticket, different varieties, opening a bank account, and other activities. So this is considered to be tasks. And tasks are, the learners are prepared for by pedagogical tasks. The ability to perform the task itself is scaffolded by pedagogical tasks that the teacher is devising on the basis of the outcome that we want to see the learners perform. So Tblt has not been without criticism. And some of the important points, we just put out the 3 main important points, is that Tblt is being said that it neglects grammar and vocabulary to the detriment of learning actually of the second language. That Tblt does not work in different educational environments. In addition to university environment, we have K-12 environment, and it's difficult to get adolescents to learn in Tblt mode and younger children in general. And so the third challenge was defined as task-based language teaching is not acceptable in certain cultures. For example, Asian cultures are used to more receiving information, rather than producing and going out for the knowledge, the students being more active. So they're in a more of a passive role. And as you can see, task-based language teaching and learning puts learner at the center of learning, and their needs is what defines our tasks, the tasks that we choose to teach in our classrooms. So recently, Brifonsky and McKay had a meta-analysis, and I just wanted to briefly touch on some results. They went over 52 studies, and overall effect size is 0.93. 0.93 is a very high effect size. So to give you an idea, the way Dr. John Hattie talks about it, and he's a very an authority on statistical analysis and meta-analysis. So the way he describes progress of a student in 1 year is equal to 0.4. So for an influencer, whatever it is that we're doing in the classroom to be effective, it needs to have at least 0.4, which would be the general gains that learners normally get in 1 year of instruction. Anything above 0.4 is actually the goal, is what we're going for. Those are accelerators. And so as you can see, task-based language learning boasting 0.94 effect size is very significant. So it's an evidence that the results actually do come, and language is actually being learned. 79% of participants, of stakeholders, rated task-based language instruction as positive experience. So those are teachers, students, administration. So it was also proven that in different culture settings, it is effective. Like I said, it's just all new information. Particularly highest results were from Middle East, surprisingly. The particularly high effect size was coming out of Middle East. And of course, there is the COVID. All of these studies, all of these 52 studies, 94% of them were analyzing foreign language learning. Of those, the 52 studies that were included in this meta-analysis, 85% dealt with English, 85%. So face-to-face classroom instruction was also significant, very high, and results, the conclusion of the study was that we really cannot generalize the results to every language or to every setting. However, the first analyses are very, very promising. This was a meta-analysis of programs. Task-based instruction used to build a program syllabus. There is also a large body of research that deals with peer interaction, different languages, processing instruction during task, and multitude of different aspects of second language acquisition. So from here, I would like to invite our participants to share about their own experiences working with task-based language instruction in their classrooms. And I think we're going to start with Dmitrii. I'm going to invite you, Dmitrii, in the conversation, and please introduce yourself and tell us about your experience of how you were introduced to task-based language instruction. How did you know about it?
Thank you, Svetlana. My name is Dmitrii Pastushenkov. I'm a PhD candidate at Michigan State University. So I was introduced to TBLT in 2013. So I moved to the United States in 2012 for my master's, for graduate studies. And I did StarTalk, and it was my first teaching job in the United States. And StarTalk was entirely different from what I experienced as a language teacher and as a language learner in Russia. So research-based pedagogy, TBLT, no grammar drills, no grammar tables, just fun, communicative activities, authentic materials, realistic stuff, something that you do in real life, and was amazing. I loved it. And Dr. Brian Baer, the director of the StarTalk program, he invited me to attend the StarTalk teacher development program, also at Kent State University, where I learned more about the theory behind TBLT, where we designed different tasks, lessons. Yeah, so this is when it happened. And I'm at Michigan State now, so I think every professor that I have here is a proponent of TBLT. So Paula Winke, Sean Lowen, so we try to use TBLT in our classes, and I'm teaching Russian right now. This is what we are trying to do. And yeah, that's my introduction.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Wendy, please, how did you get introduced to TBLT?
Sure, yeah, my name is Wendy Martelle. I'm an assistant professor of applied linguistics and ESL at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. In addition to ESL, I also teach first year Russian here. So I was first introduced to TBLT, I think in graduate school, probably in the early 2000s at some point, probably introduced through a class on like theory and methods of language teaching and language learning. So we were introduced to a variety of methods and techniques, and TBLT was one of those. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really great, a great idea. And I had some experience teaching Russian. I'm thinking, but boy, how is this going to work for Russian? Because Russian has this really complex morphology and all these things going on grammatically. And I remember thinking, well, this might work for advanced learners. And then the more I thought about it, well, okay, maybe intermediate learners. And then I thought, well, how can we do this with beginning learners with like maybe input-based tasks, or like, you know, so my thinking of TBLT has kind of evolved over the years with, you know, the different experiences I've had with teaching. So that's pretty much how I was introduced to TBLT.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. Sabine, you please, how did you get introduced to it?
Yeah, hello, I'm Sabine Siekmann. I'm a professor of applied linguistics and foreign languages at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And this is a theme. I was introduced to TBLT in my PhD program at the University of South Florida. I think I'm a little bit older than Wendy, so it was probably a little bit before you. And again, it was a similar story where growing up in Germany, I had a very sort of traditional grammar-based experience to learning English as a foreign language. And I think those experiences really shape us when we first venture into teaching, and when we look at theories and we see ourselves as teachers on the other end of the spectrum. So, but I was really intrigued by TBLT to such an extent that I used it for my PhD, for my dissertation. So similar to Wendy, I actually taught first-year German, and I engaged my students in a series of 3 tasks. The first was in week 3 of first-year German, first semester German.
Wow.
So they did their first task in week 3, then in week 5, and then in week 7. And these were online tasks. So my degrees in instructional technology as well as second language acquisition. So I used web quests. I don't know if anybody remembers those. They were big once upon a time, and they were really similar to tasks, but they were being conducted online. And my focus within that was to focus on peer interaction, collaborative dialogue, as well as scaffolding and mediation, both of the learners the learners mediating each other's learning, how the task itself mediated the learning, and what the role of the teacher played in that process. I also was fortunate enough to keep building on that experience, and I was able to publish a paper on my dissertation in 2008 in a book that I co-edited with Johannes Eckert. And since then, I've been working with lots of graduate students in the area. And just to your point earlier, I have a graduate student who implemented successfully TBLT in Japan, and also had a graduate student who successfully implemented TBLT in an Alaska Native language.
How
and I'll
interesting.
hear more other stories later on, but thank you for including me in the panel.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. This is great information. Snezhana, please.
Thank you, Svetlana, and I wanted to say that I'm excited to be in this panel. It's my first panel about TBLT, and although I learned about task-based approach almost a decade ago at one of the ADSIL conferences, and by the way, now this year the conference is going on right now. I'm trying to put this radar for new approaches, all new innovative approaches. So then Dr. Kammer presented his research on TBLT in low proficiency language classes. And then I started looking into that topic, and apparently I discovered an interesting debate in foreign annals that dates back to 2003. Where Van Patten and Wong started with this article, "The evidence is in, drills are out," which is obviously, you can judge by the name, is against the drills. And actually there was a response, and the response was published in the same journal. It was written by Lever, Rifkin, and Shechtman, and they challenged the main conclusions in the article in their commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a followed response by Won and Van Patten, where they challenged Russian instructors to conduct empirical studies which would clearly prove the usefulness of drill.
Mm-hmm.
And then William Connor and Lynn de Benedette conducted such a study in 2011, focusing on teaching the distinction between directional and locational expressions in Russian. So verbs of motion, and like идти в кино, идти в музей, быть в музее. And the study revealed high proficiency gains of the students in the innovative no drill instruction group. It wasn't a TBLT, but that was something that was focusing on meaning rather than form. And it was compared with the traditional instruction group. And so the results were in favor of approaches such as TBLT. And I personally was really excited about it because I didn't see a strong connection between the drills my students were doing, especially in elementary level classes, and the result, the effect of them. However, as you probably know, those of you who teach Russian, almost all US-based L2 elementary Russian textbooks would contain drills in various form. And so I slowly started implementing TBLT as a part of it. So I couldn't say no to drills. So I'm trying to take this balanced approach. And yeah, today I'll actually be speaking about a higher level class that I teach, and like Wendy mentioned, logically you would think yes, better used in higher level language classes.
Right. Well, thank you, Snezhana. I think our participants are warmed up now enough to hear about our stories, what it is that we actually do in the classroom. What does TBLT look like in the classroom? And maybe Dmitrii, you could start us with that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share some slides with you. And I'll talk a little bit about peer interaction and play some recordings for you from communicative tasks. So peer interaction in SLAs, in second language acquisition. Well, and this is very different from what I experienced in Russia as a learner and teacher, but in TBLT, peer interaction is probably one of the most common types of interaction. And it has its pros, it has its cons. So as for the pros, well, peer interaction is a platform for experimenting with the language. So the students are not afraid to make mistakes, they can try different things. And research has shown that peer interaction can facilitate L2 development and also promotes production of so-called language-related episodes, LREs, a form of meta-language in which learners discuss the language that they produce. So they discuss the language and they learn the language. And peer interaction and communicative tasks involving peers are often perceived as less stressful than teacher-student interaction. Well, and of course, peer interaction has its cons. So many teachers are concerned about peer interactive tasks because of L1 use may go out of hand maybe, or students may go off tasks talking with their peers. So instead of doing the test, they will talk about, I don't know, football, for example, I don't know. And there are different ways how we can, there are so many types of communicative tasks, so we don't have time to discuss every one of them. Just want to show you one task. It's called a consensus task. And this one is a scholarship task where students need to discuss candidates for a scholarship to go in the United States. So this is how it looks like. So this is the Russian version of the task. So the participants, the students, get two pieces of information about three candidates. So we have three candidates here, Albert, Gina, Julia. And so different pieces of information. So the students need to interact. So this is where peer interaction comes into play. So they need to interact and discuss the background of the three candidates, and they need to choose the best candidate for a fellowship.
Dmitrii,
yeah.
I apologize. Can I interject for a second? I have a question. So does everybody see all of these candidates?
Yes. So yeah.
Every
So
student has a piece of paper like this.
yes. So
And they
one
can see it
student
around.
has,
Okay.
yes, that's a good question. Yeah. So student one sees this piece of information on the left, and the second student. So this is a pair task, right? So one student gets one piece of information, and the other gets another piece of information, and they don't see each other's information, pieces of information, information sheets. So they need to talk to each other, and they need to figure out who is the best candidate. They read through the descriptions, share what they think, and come up with a consensus. And they don't have to come up with a consensus, maybe. So that's the process is more important than the final outcome, right? So, and this is an example of, this is a scholarship task, but there are different versions of consensus tasks widely used in research and TBLT. And you can also, I think it's important, and we'll probably talk about it later, it's important to talk about the topic of tasks. So this one, I used it with my ESL students, all of them, you know, they know stuff about fellowships. This is an interesting topic for them, right? So they're, you know, they want to discuss, it is meaningful for them. It is also meaningful for my Russian students because, you know, many of them would like to apply for scholarship to study in Russia, for example. But we did this task with learners of English outside academia in Russia. And this task didn't work so well for them, for example. So
why do you think was that?
We just, I don't know, again, I'm trying to avoid the word authentic, but I think the topic is just doesn't work for them. They're not interested in fellowships. Maybe like ordering a meal, I don't know, at a restaurant, I don't know, something else. Politics, probably not, I don't know. But fellowships, probably not, yeah. So, but for ESL students, for Russian learners, it worked very well. And again, I don't want to talk a lot about statistics here, but such tests, they promote language-related episodes, the production of meta-language. So the students discuss the language that they produce. And if they discuss, maybe they learn something new. And here are some examples of interactions. This is, I actually can play a couple of recordings for you if I can. I think I can.
That would be great. That would be great to hear what actually goes on in the classroom.
Yeah, so Russian students, Russian-speaking English learners. And this one, I think, from another task called My Favorite Things, and it's a vocabulary language-related episode. Let me play it for you.
No, because I don't know why. I don't like Burger King, and now we have карантин, and дистанционное, как будет, я не помню. Distant study, so I sit at home.
Yeah, don't go to restaurants. So that's so one of the learners, she didn't know the word for distant learning, дистанционное обучение. So, and her interlocutor helped her out, and then she repeated distant study. So, which is good. So what else do we have? And we have another example here. Yes, so this one, I think it's from the Spot the Difference task. It's a grammar LRE. Well, you could probably argue that it's a vocabulary LRE, to be honest with you. So it's about child's, children, this thing. So let's listen to this one.
Two power of childs, or two childs, I think. Childs? Two children, not? Two children? Childs. That's really interesting. I don't know what is
okay, I don't know what it's okay, it's two young person. Okay.
Child and child. Was
yes.
this you?
So they came up with a solution. They didn't figure out whether it's child's or children. They say it's two young person, or also like they just switch to Russian and say boy and boy, мальчик and мальчик. Yeah. So yeah. So this is an example of peer interaction. So they're working on their own, and they produce the language, and they discuss the language, and this is an example of a peer interactive task.
So what was they doing?
Well,
what was the task?
This one is a Spot the Difference task. It's It's
Oh, I see. So they had two pictures.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to the consensus task, right? So because they have
Uh-huh.
different pieces of information. In this case, they have two different pictures, and they need to discuss the differences between the pictures.
Differences, right?
Yeah, and they talk about children in this case. So what else? We have spot the difference task. We also had consensus task as well. Yeah, I think, well, please see our AAAL presentation. So we'll talk more about this study. And yeah, but we had 3 tasks: spot the difference, consensus, and conversation. Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
In a little bit, we'll be talking about the challenges. So in the meantime, I'm going to move on to Wendy and her story, what she uses in her classroom.
Yeah, sure. I would like to share a task that I did with first semester Russian students. So yes, all of them were native English speakers learning Russian first year. So towards the end of the semester, and I'm going to share my screen here, if I can. Yeah, here we go. So just to share you what the task actually looked like from the students' perspective. So I had them watch a couple of videos related to going back to school, and they did a story sequencing activity. And the main task was to create a back to school shopping list for Cheburashka, who is a beloved cartoon character in Russian. So their objectives were sequencing the events of the story, recognizing how Russian expresses where something or someone is located. So this was like the beginning of showing location, like the prepositional case, identifying school-related vocabulary, and then browsing a Russian website to create a back-to-school shopping list. Okay, so first they watched, and this was an authentic video. They met Cheburashka for the first time. So they watched the video of Cheburashka. So it was the episode where Gena, he comes back home, he's at the airport, but Cheburashka isn't there to meet him. And it turns out Cheburashka didn't know because he didn't know how to read. He couldn't read the telegram that was sent. So Gena's like, Cheburashka, you have to go back to school. And he's like, because you don't know how to read. So yeah, so there were a few events that went on in that. So they watched a YouTube video about 18 minutes or so. And then I took screenshots from the video itself, and with captions like "Shapakiak v lifte," she's in the elevator. Gena v aeroportu, he's at the airport, and then they put the images in the appropriate order. So that was one thing that they did, and then the next step, I had them watch a video and play pause it. So this was a video. So the Cheburashka video had subtitles. This next video that I had them watch did not have subtitles. So it was authentic Russian. It was a young woman talking about her back to school, what she got back, her back to school shopping list, showing off her back to school supplies. And then I let them know about the video. So this is at full velocity. It's like it's Russian. It's authentic Russian. You don't have to understand everything. You don't need to. But what I did was every time she said a vocabulary word about back to school, it was an interactive video. So I would stop the video and I would highlight the word. I would show the word would pop up, and they would see the word as they were hearing it in the video. So they did that. They were able to watch it as many times as they want, with or without the interactive pop-ups for the vocabulary. And then what I had them do, just to do a quick matching, what's the new vocabulary that you learned, just had them identify those. And then now let's go shopping. Okay, so what does Cheburashka need to go back to school? So I had them go into I guess like the Russian Office Depot to look for school supplies. So I view this as an input-based task. So they would listen to videos, and they're navigating a website. They're putting items in a shopping list. They were given a budget, and it says, okay, based on this budget, add some things to the shopping list. Take a screenshot of your shopping list, and that's your assignment to do that. And then yeah, and share it below. And then, yeah, so that was pretty much the task. It got a lot of really, the students really liked it because they like Cheburashka. And even one student says, "Oh, I just can't help but spoil the little guy." So I had to buy all kinds of things for him. So, that was, yeah, so that was a task that I did at beginning level classroom.
It sounds like fun, really. It sounds
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
So
I hope so. They seem to like it. So
engagement was there, and by the
yeah.
comments, student comments. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Sabine, what about you? What did you use in the classroom?
Yeah, I don't have really one specific example to share. I kind of want to give an overview of a variety of things that I have done. And Wendy's example just reminded me of my dissertation research, because I had them, you know, I think that was the second task in week 5. We had just learned about articles of clothing and furniture and things like that. And I had them play The Price is Right. So I gave them pictures of some pretty awful and some pretty nice items from an online catalog, and I had them guess how much they thought they would cost, and then they had to go to the website and see if they were right or not. So it's this idea of the outcome is you can find the correct outcome on your own, right? It was student autonomy in a way, right? It wasn't that they told me and then I told them if they were right or wrong. They predicted with the partner, and then they checked to see if they're right, if they were right or wrong. And then they communicated about that. And then at the end, we took a poll. So we are also kind of talking about liking and disliking things, which is why I picked some pretty gaudy things and some things that I thought were pretty nice. And then they could say, at the end, we kind of had a poll about how many people like that, you know, purple sweater, and how many people liked that armoire, which of course is very cultural too, because what's an armoire? I mean, who has one of those in Florida? But in Germany, it's a thing, right? People have them because we don't have built-in closets. So that just reminded me of that, and that went really well with early, you know, with even early students, just in week 5 of the class. I also wanted to share about a group of 3rd graders. So we had the point earlier that Svetlana made about sometimes K through 12 is ignored. And because I had a little German Saturday morning school, including my daughter who's bilingual with German and English, and her friends who she was engaging in learning German. And what we did was very task-based. There was no grades, there was no assignments. It was just us getting together with these, you know, 3rd grade girls doing German. And so it was like, it has to be fun. It's not like we can just do grammar exercises. It has to be something useful. I was really interested in them feeling it was useful to them. So one of the first things we did was we started with family. So we introduced the family unit. And then their task was to create their own PowerPoint about their family, right? So, and then they wanted to know how to say things like duck and chicken and, you know, their pets. So it created this authenticity and this desire to communicate and to create something meaningful. And then, like, the second meeting we had, these were the kids standing up in front of our little group and saying, "Das ist meine Mama, das ist mein Papa, das ist mein Hund." So they were doing something meaningful with the language, and they ended up with a little book that they could have. That was a real example of what they had learned and something meaningful to them. Currently, I have a bit of a ambitious project that is into the future, hopefully maybe for summer 22. I'm hoping to put together and organize a multi-level German immersion program at UAF for high school students and college students. And I'm thinking about organizing because, you know, it's going to be differentiated instruction, multiple levels in the same kind of classroom or in the same session. And I really think task-based learning is great for that, because you set sort of a goal and then you give the students you give them some resources, and some resources they have to find. And then you can come together and you can use near peer mentoring in the process. And I'm kind of thinking about organizing it around tourist locations like the large animal research stations. And the more advanced students can prepare a German tour guide, being a German tour guide at the large animal research station or at the museum. And so it gives them something meaningful to do. And then the first and second year students can prepare for the tour and then interact with the event. So we're creating a real world context for using the language and for learning about something other than the German language. We're using the German language to learn about muskox. I'm going to have to learn some vocabulary.
Well, that sounds remarkable. Sounds so encouraging. It makes me want to sign up. Makes me want to sign up, and makes me want to do something for Russian like this. It's sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
It's a little ambitious. So
yeah, of course.
I'm a big thinker, and then I need to figure out the logistics. But I'm excited, and I think task-based language learning is well suited for that kind of an event or program.
Absolutely. Are you thinking of this coming summer, 2022?
22, not 22, this.
Next.
Yeah,
Okay.
I need a whole year to really wrap my head around that. And of course, this summer we don't know what things will look like. Hopefully in 2022, things will be better.
Right. I hope. Well, good luck. Best of luck. That's just, thank you for sharing. So encouraging. It just fills you with hope, makes you want to do something. Thank you. Snezhana, would you please share your experience with running Tblt in your classroom?
Yes, absolutely. And I just realized I did not introduce myself in the beginning. I just wanted to say that I have been teaching Russian. I'm a part of World Languages Department at Stetson University here in Florida. And I am a visiting assistant professor of Russian, so I teach all 4 levels of Russian. We offer 4 years of the language, and I'm also a director of the peer tutoring for all languages that our university offers. And so my research interests are very much connected with the peer tutoring and what Dmitrii was talking about, how peers communicated. That was of extreme interest to me. And so I admired the other presentations. It was very interesting. Thank you, colleagues. And I just will add a little bit of my pilot project that I conducted 2 years ago by now, and that was in a group of my advanced level Russian. There were only 3 students, and I wanted to teach them not only the language but also some critical thinking, some maybe like content-based global competence. And basically the idea was to see if they have this understanding of international phenomena of all sorts, their ability to learn and work with people from diverse linguistics and cultural backgrounds, to ability to analyze what they actually learn. And I decided to, instead of taking a textbook, just to use the travel log by Ilf and Petrov as the main content resource, and it's their road memoir from 1935. The idea was to combine that resource with Vladimir Posner and Brian Kahn's separate travelogues titled Одноэтажная Америка by Vladimir Posner and Одноэтажная Америка by Brian Kahn. So basically that's also 2 written resources. But as you probably know, there was a very famous documentary, 16-episode documentary by Vladimir Posner about America, where Vladimir Posner and Ivan Urgan repeated the iconic travel of Ilf and Petrov Thus, all three resources had the same points of interest. For example, the Ford Museum, or New York, or prisons in America. And based on those materials, I created 5 different topics for students to concentrate during the semester. And as for the main tasks, main types of tasks that I used, I would mention the 3. So I'm talking again not about one particular task. It was the whole semester full of various tasks, but like Sabine, I'm talking about types of tasks. And the first one is the information gap tasks. And I will give you an example. For example, there was a jigsaw puzzle type activity when one student would be assigned to watch a documentary episode, and another one was supposed to read a corresponding chapter by Posner, and the third student was supposed to read a corresponding chapter by Kant. So Ilf and Petrov were not even involved, but basically the producers of the documentary, they also wrote something based on there. So basically there were even more connections between those 2 resources, which was fascinating. And
excuse me, Snezhana. So all 3 students were reading about the same topic.
Yeah, the chapter, for example, the chapter called
reading or watching, or
yeah, actually the documentary had the separate chapter on Cleveland and the medical like health system of America, but Ilf and Petrov did not visit Cleveland, but that was so exciting. Well, the episode is one of the strongest in my opinion among the whole series, so we even did that. Basically I realized that students had different interests, and in the beginning I wanted to actually take different chapters and I wanted to have different focus throughout the semester, but apparently students communicated their interests that are connected with different ideas, but for example, I did not want to touch on American penitentiary system, but one of the students was interested, and she was highly involved in a project that Stetson is running the prisons. So we actually did that, and we discussed capital punishment and all. I was really excited that we can discuss something that not only teaches students to communicate their ideas in Russian, but also to provide analysis, to demonstrate their critical thinking. Something that I think is important about TBLT, rather than just a traditional approach, especially at the upper level classes. So basically, I'll just give you a couple more types of tasks. It was also the second type was cognitive tasks, and well, basically it's a lower level task and more grammar oriented one. And I couldn't separate from grammar at all, and I really wanted to see how students can do the close reading, how they can translate, how they can understand the listening exercises. So all of these things were included in the course, but also interestingly, the resource is so robust. Ilf and Petrov created a series of pictures, and Urgant and Posner, they also created a series of pictures of their trip, and of course the documentary itself, it's very visual. So we also compared pictures from almost 100 years ago and contemporary America, and students were able to produce text with no linguistic support whatsoever. So that was something interesting. I was talking about, yeah, that was an interesting part of the class. Well, I can actually go more into detail, or would it
I
be
had
okay
it.
to move on?
Yeah, I had a question for you, Snezhana, if you don't mind. So it sounds like what you describe. So two very rich texts, photographs, documentary. Sounds like there was a lot of preparation on your part. I'm trying to move on to our discussion into challenges of running TBLT in your classroom, mindful that we have 10 more minutes left
So
for
then,
our entire discussion. So
do I can
what was
I can
difficult
actually
for you?
start?
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah.
can. Yeah,
Well,
because
mhm.
that was my immediately as soon as I started talking about it, I remembered how it was challenging for me with the scarcity of materials. First of all, and for example, Wendy thank you, shared her materials. This is tons of work. I actually also teach Cheburashka, not to the first year Russian, to third year Russian students. But this is a very good, awesome idea. But I can imagine how much time I need to spend. I don't know, Wendy, how much time did you spend preparing for it? Was it a lot or not a lot? Or it just looks that it's a lot. To me,
No, it was a lot. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell the hours because it was spread over some time, but I spent so much time thinking about it. How am I going to order? How am I going to sequence the things? Where am I going to find choosing the authentic video without the subtitles? That took a lot of time. So I'm like, okay, I need to find a video that has a lot of repetition of these new vocabulary words. These are beginners, and yeah, so it did take quite a lot of time.
And even like choosing the pictures, and putting them, annotating them. So to me, it was a lot of work, especially because TBLT is the method that actually encourages you to play by the year, not by the year, by the ear. So right, so you see your students are interested in that part. Yes, why not we go into that particular discussion. Another challenge was the fact that upper level, less commonly taught language classes are very small. So, it's good not to have 20 students because task-based approach is for smaller programs, but to have just 3 students was also not very convenient, especially for larger projects like interview projects, like debates. Debates were a big part of our class because it's a real task, a skill, and real life skill, real life task, and but doing a debate with 3 students was pretty much challenging. So these 2 challenges I wanted to a lot of work, scarcity of materials, scarcity of students.
Right. Would anybody else like to share their challenges, some tips, how you overcame it, Sabine?
Yeah, I think definitely the time is something that is a worry, I think, for teachers, especially if you're teaching multiple classes and you're in the classroom a lot. What I found is almost the bigger tasks are less preparation in a sort of way. So the more you build in the student discovery and the students using resources, it is finding the resources that can be very challenging. But I think if you're almost thinking a little bit more longer term, it's almost a little bit less intimidating, right? If you're thinking, okay, I have to do like the smaller tasks like information gaps or those kinds of, they can almost be more work because you have to find all the pictures, you have to do all the pre-teaching, you have to do make the worksheets, have one for this group and one for that group, and then you have to keep it all in mind and give the right people the right piece of paper.
And all for sort of 45 minutes. Once it's gone,
or
it's gone.
maybe 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So in my experience, sometimes the longer range or medium range tasks that are a little bit more simulations or role playing or creating something, they can the balance between the preparation time and the time to complete the task is a little bit more even. So that is something that I have found in terms of just the challenge of the time requirement.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, Dmitrii, what about you?
Yeah, so one of the things that, I mentioned consensus task, right? So students need to talk and pick up, the best candidate for a position. Maybe the topic is not interesting. So my main recommendation is make the tasks interesting for your students, consider what they are doing. So it's a fellowship, so maybe appropriate for ESL students, American students learning Russian. But if you work with adult learners of English from Russia, maybe they're not interested in fellowships. Also, what I noticed is that students tend to like communicative tasks, they like peer interaction, but some of them are not used to peer interactive tasks. Maybe you're teaching ESL and your students, let's say they come from China, they did grammar drills, they don't talk to each other, or Japan, for example, they do grammar drills, their grammar is amazing, but they don't like to speak to each other, right? Give them examples, models, do tasks more than once. Maybe do a consensus task once. They're shy, they don't understand what's going on. They do it once, they like it, and do it again next time, and gonna get even better. So
Don't get discouraged, right?
yeah, don't get
Sending a ray
discouraged.
of hope
Yeah.
for everyone. Well, we're wrapping up our discussion. I hope there was something good useful for all of our participants. Task-based language learning and teaching is a very interesting and very huge topic. We can literally discuss it for hours and hours and hours. We can talk about different sides of it. Like you could hear how important it was to conduct learner needs analysis, and it's one of the very, very first things that the literature is going to tell you to do, to conduct analysis. What do your learners want to know? It's that there are many ways to do that too. So that said, my personal take on it was that there was very few tasks actually described in the literature. When you start reading research, there is a lot of conversation about numbers and how this played out and how that condition played out. But what was the task? You literally have to go through piles of literature to find what was going on in the classroom, and much less trying to gauge and pick what works for your environment, for your setting, for your classroom. So I was going to introduce this great resource that's coming out for Russian for task-based instruction in teaching Russian as a foreign language. It's going to be an edited collection published by Routledge, but I also want to say that it's not just for Russian. It's going to be a collection of tasks that literally any teacher, any foreign language teacher can use for their classroom work. The only volume that is language-based was published a couple of years ago for Chinese. So Chinese and Russian are kind of leading the way here. It's going to be a great resource. Yeah, I'm happy to share it with everyone. So thank you for participating in our panel today. We welcome your questions. At the end of we're going to upload our slides, and at the end of our slides, you will see a list of resources. All of the publications that we cited today in our presentation will be cited there. You will be able to connect to those resources, and you will be able to connect to the panelists today. So we'll have email addresses. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with us. We are happy to hear from you. We invite your feedback. We invite your ideas, your thoughts, your questions, and hope to keep this task-based language instruction communication going and bring new life into it. Thank you so much again, and до встречи в эфире. Bye-bye.
До свидания, до встречи.